Now that's our batten around our marks, but the only thing I'm just going to check where our forward mould is, which is marked on our template. That's given us quite a wide bit of plank there. We're looking at 4 3/4 inches. I'm just going to check on the boat itself that 4 3/4 inches isn't going to ask too much of the plank in terms of cupping. We really want the plank to be flat on that mould with a bit of twist forward of it. Using a scrap of plank, we can put that on there, and actually we want this to come to where it touches the mould. Past there is not really what we're after, so we're looking at a position about here. That gives us a width there that we want of about 4 inches. We don't want much more than 4 inches on our forward mould, and what we've got at the moment is 4 3/4. So I think we're just going to narrow down the forward end a bit. We may narrow midships also. We were going for nice wide planks on the flat areas midships. We were looking at 5 inches, 5 inches, 4.5 inches for our first 3 planks. So we want to bring them out to here. But we've got to bear in mind what's happening on the other moulds. So I think we'll just draw that in a little bit. I think our stern is okay. We can always narrow it down later if we need to. It may be that we just close that down there. It's going to be a bit hit and miss to start with, because the question is how it affects the next plank really. But I think I'll just put a weight on that batten there, and I think that's the sort of thing we'll draw that in, but then cut it slightly bigger. When it's steamed up in place, we can always trim it back to where we estimate it ought to be. So if we draw that in now, it'll be a lot easier than trying to draw it in on a curved plank. Everything that happens to this plank will be copied the other side, so ideally then the plank widths and everything, the planks come up together and you end up with 2 sides of the boat that are the same shape. Although that is pretty rare in a wooden boat, but the moulds are obviously symmetrical, and hopefully the planking will be as well. So we've marked our plank to the widths we want, especially up here on the forward mould. But now I think we'll just let that batten run. And that's going to be the line we cut, because we can always plane away the top edge once it's fitted, or once the bottom edge is fitted. We can narrow it down to get the right sort of line for the following plank. probably best now to steam it in place and then fit it finally later on. We just transfer the shape of that plank onto our next piece of spruce so that we can cut out the other side the same. Normally when we're cutting planks out further up the boat, we cut them out in pairs, tack 2 boards of spruce together, lay the pattern on, mark it out, cut them both out together, stick them in the vise, plane the edges together, then separate them, plane the bevels and different things on them. But for the garboard, because we're a little bit in the dark with this one, we're just going to fit the one at a time, but at least then we've got a template of it before we start, so that we don't have to template the other side. So we've got our plank there, we've got our template. If we just drop the template back on top of the plank, and on our template we marked where the mould number 3 came, which is there. So just transfer that mark onto our plank, so we can clamp that up in place with a pretty good idea of where it's going. So there's our plank. It's a pretty stiff bit of timber, so I don't want to force it up into place there. We need to make sure it stays up on our first mould, especially down here, because as we twist it in, it's got a tendency to pull out down here, so we need to make sure that's in. So it's a case now of getting some steam on it for maybe 15 minutes, and then hopefully just clamping it up in place and then letting it cool and set to that shape. The only thing I will do is just put something soft in on this mould, otherwise there's a tendency when this gets clamped up, the mould will actually just dent the plank there, which just isn't very pretty. So we'll stick a little sliver of timber or something in there just to spread the load of the mould on the plank. In order to sort of keep the steam on the plank, I just got a little plywood sleeve that's seen better days. The plywood's delaminating, one thing and another, but it's ideal just for sliding over the plank, plugging our steam pipe in, sticking a couple of rags in the end, and steaming our plank.